In Python, you'll sometimes see the phrase duck typing, and I thought I'd make a short little video on what duck typing is. In other languages, like C, for example, when you create a variable, you have to type it, which means that if you want to declare an integer, then you can declare it to be of type integer. If you want a string, you declare it to be of type string. In Python, you don't do that. You just begin using a variable. There's no declarations. So that leads to something called duck typing. And duck typing basically means if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, then it's a duck. So here's a simple little example of duck typing, basically stolen off from the internet, where we're going to create three different classes. One's of a duck, and this duck can quack. It says quack, quack. This duck can fly by flapping. We have a class hawk that doesn't quack, but it does fly. And then we have a class person who has a method quack and a method fly, just like a duck. So it has the same methods as duck, but the methods behave differently. For a person, it counts how many times it quacks, and then prints out a big quack. And for flying, it prints out its quack count instead of actually doing any flying like flapping. But it does have a method for quacking, and it does have a method for flying. So if we get on here to the main program, we call this other, let's see, this is a procedure in the forest, and we call it with a class. And the first one we're going to call it with class duck. Second one we'll call it with class person, and the third one we'll call it with class hawk. And all in the forest does is try to call the method quack and try to call the method fly. And the assumption then is if it has those two methods, if it can quack and if it can fly, then it must be a duck because it has those methods. So this is called duck typing. You check to see if something is the type you want, assume if it has the methods that you need to operate. Okay, so if we run this, then, oh, hang on, we got a problem here. Let's see, we got to give it an interpreter. So we're on 3.3. Run. Here we go. Okay. Now, if it doesn't have one of these methods, then we're going to get an error, and it'll say, well, you can't quack or you couldn't fly, one or the other, so you're not a duck. Okay, so when we call this with duck, then we call duck dot quack and duck dot fly, and we get a quack quack and a flap flap. That's those two. And then we call it with a person, and we call it with the person. That gets passed up into the forest, and we get person dot quack and person dot fly. And so in that case, for the quack, we get a quack, and we up the duck count or the quack count. And then when we do the flying, we actually print the quack count, which is now 1. And then when we try it with the hawk, so we pass in hawk, and we call hawk.quack and hawk.fly, then we get an error. So it doesn't do anything in this try block. It goes right to the exception and says, oh, it couldn't, let's see, it couldn't quack, so it's not a duck. Okay, so again, in other languages, you explicitly state the type of a variable, and in Python, you don't. So if a variable or an object behaves in a certain way, then you say, well, again, it quacks like a duck, and I guess it flies like a duck, therefore it's a duck, and that's duck typing. So you could see this kind of, once in a while, PyCharm will come up and say something about, are you duck typing, which means that you've got a method in this class that looks a lot like a method up in this class. They seem to have the same methods. Are you duck typing? So you may be wanting to do that, you may be not. All right, that's it. Duck typing, easy stuff.